Right, and welcome back to Live from the Heartland. That was Rolling Stones singing Winter, a song that I think we went around the table here and 3 out of 4 of us never heard it before. So thank you for finding that, Thom. There is one of the fun aspects of doing this show. Each week we get to try and beat each other out finding really good music for our momentary music
and
breaks.
Our theme is winter.
Yes,
today.
So we got a big winter emphasis
Winter in
today.
America.
We hope to have you warmed up by the end of the show.
Indeed. So we are so happy to, for the first time on our show.
No, Katy.
When? Second?
Maybe
I've
you
been
were
here
out of
before.
town. She's been here before.
Okay,
you
okay.
do that every week.
All right. So we started out wrong here with my introduction.
That was a while ago.
Joanna Klonsky is a communication strategist, a political animal, daughter of Michael's oldest, some old friends of Michael's and less old friends of mine. And we just want to stop this introduction before it goes to heck and back again. Welcome back to Live from the Heartland in the political season that is yours, baby.
Man, thank you guys so much for having me.
It's
great to be here.
It's a pleasure.
So what do you
to
think of
see
that,
you.
Nancy Pelosi?
You know, I heard what you guys said earlier, and yeah, Nancy Pelosi really stuck it to him. But I also want to give credit to the Aviation Authority workers who
basically
forced his
workers
hand.
did
If
this.
they hadn't done that, I don't think we'd be having this
Absolutely
conversation right now.
correct. Absolutely.
They're the ones who turned up the heat and
Yeah, and
forced him.
the threat of them doing that again in Atlanta next week for the Super Bowl.
Was that mostly
Yeah, no
LaGuardia? I mean, I understand.
It started
East Coast.
with LaGuardia, and then all of a sudden we started hearing
Yeah.
Philadelphia. It was all over the East Coast. So.
Even at full strength, when the government is on, we are 30% down on air traffic controllers. We have 30% missing of that workforce across the nation. That's really seriously bad.
That's pretty wild. I learned a lot about air traffic controllers this week.
No, we want to thank the workers who did this, but Nancy Pelosi, I think, has really withstood a little challenge. I think she's 80. Well, she didn't have a lot
No,
to
she's
lose.
tough, but it's also a testament to all of the organizing
Yeah.
that went into taking back the House in November
Right
and
on.
putting her in the position to be there.
Amen to that.
So
Exactly.
this is crystal balling, but what do we all do in 3 weeks when he doesn't get his funding and wants to?
Doing a
Having
national emergency.
Do a national
and move
emergency
troops
and-
to the border and build
Well,
a
then
fence.
we have to go in the streets. Well, you were asking our guest, weren't you?
Yes,
Yeah,
I was.
you know, I work with the American Federation of Government Employees, Local 704. That's the local union that represents the Environmental Protection Agency workers. So I've been working on this government shutdown stuff a lot, talking a lot with workers who are out, furloughed, waiting to be able to go back. And they're real clear that this can't keep happening. They've got to be able to go to work because it's not just about them and their own personal finances, although that's important. The EPA workers are like, think about the stuff I'm not able to do to protect the environment.
Exactly.
Some of that stuff is irreversible. No one's watching to make sure what these polluters are doing. No one's holding anyone accountable. We don't know what they did during those 30 some odd days. Now we have to go back and try to figure it out.
Yeah.
So folks are clear. We're not going to keep doing this. But at the end of the day, he's
should
the
we be-
hostage taker.
Should we be talking about a national strike? Is that the only way to stop this guy, short of impeachment?
Let's talk about it.
Yeah, we could talk about it, but
Heck yeah.
I mean, Thom, when you say that, it's like Americans don't have any clue about a national strike. I mean, really, when we call in a big march, like say the Women's March for the last 2 years, which got hundreds of thousands of women and men marching all across the country, it was still just a few people who felt safe enough in that particular environment that they could march because it was genteel enough.
But I don't think it hurts to start talking about it and start injecting the idea into everyone's consciousness. And the other thing I would say is that I don't know that we need a general strike. What we need is for these federal workers to do what they did yesterday, which they can't go on strike, right? It's illegal, but they can, when they start to
Call in sick
out or make it clear we're not putting up with this anymore, everyone has no choice but to react.
And our representatives, both Durbin and Jan Schakowsky, have stood with the workers a number of times in the last during this shutdown.
Absolutely.
In Federal Plaza,
We
couple times.
had a rally last week in Federal Plaza with almost all of the Democrats from the Illinois delegation were there.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
they've stood up to their credit.
that's good.
Yep.
So we have to keep the pressure.
So we got to
on.
keep moving along here with Joanna Klonsky. How does one sort through and decide among the 14 candidates for mayor?
Oh, you're switching the topic, aren't you?
I am, because we got
All
so
right.
much time.
You
and
buried
so
the
many
lead
questions.
there. Okay.
Well, first of all, I should say I've been consulting for Lori Lightfoot's campaign for mayor since for a long time now, and I'm excited about her. But I think, setting that aside, it is a kind of a free for all right now. And I think a lot of people are figuring out what to do and how to read these polling numbers that we've seen come out over the last week.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of polls that say a lot of different things, and no one seems to know what's really going on. So my take when it's a situation like this, basically a free for all, is I really encourage people to get to know the candidates, see who you think is most aligned with your values, who's progressive, not just on, their talking points and their platform they're putting forward, but also look at their track record.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot, like you guys just read off so many opportunities for people to go out and hear people speak. It seems like there's a mayoral forum every single day, at least one, between now and the election. Go out and hear from them, because it's a different thing when you're in the room and you can really understand and maybe even have the opportunity to ask questions.
That's right.
If there are audience question submissions. It's different from just reading the paper when you see them in person and hear from them.
Couldn't agree more.
Given that you are riding at least one horse in this race,
Sure.
what is your and there are problems with the polls which we could talk about that have been reported so far.
Yeah.
But what's your gut about who's in the top 3 or 4 positions out of these 14 candidates?
Well, it seems like Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle is up there in one of the top slots, and Susana Mendoza, many polls are showing her up there. That third spot, it looks like it could be Daley Chico. It seems like has maybe gained some strength over the last couple of weeks with all of his TV ads. But really, no one truly knows. I mean, even this poll that we've been talking about before we were on the air from the Sun-Times, that the Sun-Times put out this week, it essentially is, okay, well, let me say this. It's by the pollster matters, right? So the pollster is a pollster called We Ask America, that some people joke around that WAA, We Ask America, stands for We Aren't Accurate, because they have a long history of dubious results. So that's the sort of thing that regular people don't know.
That's
I'm
right.
a political operative, so when I see a We Ask America poll, I roll my eyes.
Yeah.
Most people aren't political operatives and would have no reason to know about their methodology and questions around them. So I think many of the polls that we have seen, people put a lot of weight on them. I would encourage people, don't put a lot of weight on these polls right now,
Right.
unless you understand, the backstory and the methodology and what's really going on. Pay attention to who you actually like. When there's this many candidates in the race, we don't have to game the system. Vote for who you actually support and believe in and who aligns with your values.
So it's still important in this de facto primary, because there will probably be a runoff, because no one
There's
person's
gonna be
going
a
to get
runoff.
50%.
There's absolutely going to be a runoff.
So this is the time to vote for your best person.
Right,
And,
exactly.
and to not weigh the who's going to win, who has the best chance of winning.
Right.
This is when we really have a chance to vote our conscience, so to speak.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
I'm
whoever
s-
that is.
I'm sorry. Let me just put something in here that might disagree with that. When you've got people like Bill Daley on the ballot, Paul Vallis, Gary Chico, who are, the 3 kind of white guys-ish, chasing
They
after the women who have been in the top polling.
There's a bunch
for
of other
quite a
white
while.
guys, too, by the way, that we haven't even mentioned.
Yeah, I'm not even going to
There's
mention
a plethora
them.
of white guys.
There are a plethora. I'm not going to mention the former cop. I'm not.
Yeah,
no,
let's not
going
bother
there.
with that.
But we said quite a while ago that in our neighborhood, the top 3 were Amara Enya, Lori Lightfoot, and Tony Preckwinkle.
Correct.
So all women of color. I think we should keep it that way, folks. I think the top 3 should be women of color, and preferably
great.
And
African
isn't it
American.
incredible that we're in this situation where
I
there's
know.
multiple viable women of color that we can
Exact-
even have a conversation about?
Exactly.
I think that's
exactly.
incredible and so different from the governor's primary. Where it
Exactly.
was just all white dudes almost.
Right. So I really love what you said about go out and see him, because it's true. When
Yeah.
we had our aldermanic candidate debate a week ago, it was an incredibly eye-opening experience for most of the audience. So, folks, 1, you got to vote. So make sure
Please.
you're registered, and 2, make an intelligent choice. Now, if we had runoff voting, what would that do?
If we had runoff voting.
You know what I mean?
Oh, you mean ranked choice voting?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing that a lot of people have been talking about lately. What if we could switch to a system? I think Maine has it, ranked choice
Yes,
voting, where you
Maine,
can
one
vote for
other
your
state,
first
too.
choice, and then you can
California, I
also
think.
vote for your second choice. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think California does have ranked choice voting. I love the idea, or at least having a real conversation about it, but I think it'll be a huge battle to get there.
Right.
There is a precedent in Illinois.
Is there?
We used to have 3 rep districts.
Oh,
for
yeah.
the
That's
House.
Right.
And to my mind, he got a big reform label for doing this, but it was one of the least reform things Pat Quinn ever did.
That's right. It was a
to
Pat
actually
Quinn
reduce
initiative.
the influence of the people's legislature. But we have that kind of a precedent where we could incorporate it as part of a package of reforms to maybe have a more transparent, council-oriented weak mayor system such as we're
Hey.
organized.
And have
right?
voting on
I'm all about it.
Saturday
Yeah.
in
Okay.
the warm weather.
in May.
Yeah,
That'd be nice.
exactly. Thank you. This is the weather, folks out there. This is the weather that the machine wants you to have to vote in. That's what this
gonna be
February
50 below
election
tomorrow or something like that.
goes
Wind
for.
chill.
Oh, wind
Let's
chill.
let's try and get to some of these other questions.
I just want to remind our listeners you're listening to Live from the Heartland on WLUW 88.7, and we're talking with Joanna Klonsky, who is a communications strategist working in a lot of political campaigns and other campaigns around town, including you have worked with the so-called Progressive Caucus within the Chicago
So-called.
City Council.
Yes.
And I want to talk a little bit about that, not so much your direct work with that group of people, but many people assume there are going to be new faces in the new council, in part because of incumbents who are retiring and some incumbents who may be seriously challenged. But assuming that there is a bigger progressive bloc, what do you see that group taking on first?
Yeah, I think we're in such an exciting moment. When I started working the Progressive Caucus in about 2012, we had 8 members. Now we're up to 11, and I think we have the potential to pick up a whole bunch more seats. And regardless of who's the mayor, just begin to advance a lot more progressive policy. The winds have shifted so substantially since I started working in city council politics. We're now having a meaningful conversation about ethics reform and transparency that we never could have had just 2 years ago. And so I think we're going to be able to get a lot done in that regard. I think there's a lot that we can do on environmental policy, where we've dipped our toe in the water. The Progressive Caucus has tried to advance things like a coal tar ban, which is a really carcinogenic substance that's all over the place.
That's right.
Or, a shift to 100% clean energy for the entire city, not just city-owned buildings. Those kind of environmental policies are really exciting. We're not there yet. And then, of course, we're still constantly in the uphill climb for real police reform in the city. And so I think there's a lot of potential to get more done in a
Sure.
new term with a bigger progressive caucus.
Given the conversation about the police
Consent decree?
consent
Yeah.
decree, thank you kindly. I think that we've got the biggest opportunity in my lifetime for police reforms coming from the voters.
Absolutely, but everything Rahm's done, he's done it begrudgingly and as slow as he could. And so
Right.
in a new administration, the idea that we could actually get some stuff done that's meaningful is exciting to me.
So one of the things that the array of candidates gets criticized for by the media is the lack of dealing or addressing the city's fiscal challenges, the pension problem, and the other contracts and how they get let out anymore. What do you see? What do you think? I know you've got a horse in the race here on the mayoral. Does Lori Lightfoot have a good plan for pension, for dealing with the pension debt?
Well,
By chance.
let me answer it more broadly than just about Lori. I think everyone faces the same problem. This is a massive deficit that we're facing down.
Yeah.
We've got to find a way to pay it because these workers held up their end of this bargain, and we've got to hold up our end of the bargain.
Right.
So there's a lot of candidates out there who have not really been forthcoming about what are we really facing. We're going to have
Right.
to raise revenue. How do we do it? Are we able to raise revenue in a way that taxes the very wealthy and the big corporations first and make sure they're paying their fair share before we just go back to regular homeowners, boost their property taxes, come up with more ticky-tack regressive fees and fines? It's a question of approach.
Right.
A lot of it is going to have to get done at the state level. When we have this new Pritzker administration coming in, they've got to get that fair progressive tax done
That's
that they
right.
promised to
That's
do.
right.
We've got to legalize marijuana and tax it
Right.
finally. And so all of those things are part of the conversation.
That's good. I like the that approach. And Michael, you want to?
Well, there's a lot to talk to this young lady about, and one of the things that I want to it's kind of behind the scenes, what you're hearing. Solis came out, he wired himself up, he took on Burke. What do you think's behind that, and what do they have on him?
Well, there's
What are you hearing?
1 Basquillion rumors flying around about
I
what
never heard that.
Basquillion.
Basquillion.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
So I won't even begin to speculate about what it is that he was, what compelled him to start to cooperate with the feds. It's pretty clear that we have a pervasive corruption problem in city council. We've all known about it. It's one of those things where we all knew about it. We've all known about it for years. And it's just something that we've all sort of come to accept, and we shouldn't have accepted it.
Yeah, we forget to
That's true.
challenge it.
We never should have accepted it. And some of the aldermen have been pushing, back in 2016, a bunch of the aldermen tried to get some reforms done to empower the inspector general to start to have some oversight over guys like Ed Burke and his finance committee and his $100 million fund that he oversaw with zero transparency and zero oversight.
Zero
But they
accountability.
killed it.
How did they kill that?
Well,
by the way?
who
Who was responsible
It was a
for-
really weird day. I remember it. I was there. Ed Burke was largely responsible, but let me tell you, the mayor's staff didn't help us get it done, and it was a very close vote. And at the end of the day, a lot of the people, they watered it down to the point where the aldermen who were advancing it ended up having to vote against their own legislation because they said, this is unacceptable to us. The whole point was that the inspector general needs oversight over the finance committee and other powerful committees.
Right.
That got wiped out of it.
Right.
The inspector general needs to have subpoena power. What's the point of having an inspector general? without
Minimal.
subpoena power
Exactly.
over these committees. So that got wiped out of it. So now we're going to have to take another run at it. The Progressive Caucus reintroduced it at this meeting last week, and we're going to give it a shot.
So let's, we could talk to you for the full
Yeah,
hour.
but
so
we want to
Lincoln-
get your take on the aldermanic
Yeah.
races.
Is the Lincoln Yards TIF parking meter 2.0? Or will it just roll through?
Here's what I'll say: the Lincoln Yards TIF is a bad deal for taxpayers, and it's being whenever you see the parallel to the parking meter deal is that they're pushing it through without enough time for anyone to analyze it or understand the implications.
Ron
And that
wants-
should always be a red flag. That's what they did on the parking meter
That's
deal,
right.
and that's what they're doing now. There's no reason why this has to get done in the next 2 months. Let's give it enough time. Let's hold off. Let's bring in the new administration and bring in the new city council and really analyze.
This would be
is
a
gonna
great
have-
victory, voters, if you got your alderman not to vote for Lincoln.
Well, didn't our
The Lincoln
alderman not
Yards.
show up?
He
for
didn't
it?
show up. That's
Yeah.
The
right.
Plan Commission.
But that was the planning commission. This is,
Okay.
it's
It
still
still
got
has to go before the zoning committee, which, by the way, Alderman Danny Solis, now under a cloud, was the chair of the zoning committee. To me, anything that's up in zoning should be heavily
Deferred.
scrutinized now, knowing what we know.
Exactly.
Some quick aldermanic rundowns. Do you think Patrick O'Connor might be challenged by 3 progressive candidates going up against him in 40?
I think that every incumbent, machine-oriented alderman is going to have a serious problem on their hands right now, and that he's likely to go to a runoff. He may well survive it. I think he's not necessarily unpopular in the ward, but when you have a bunch of young, energetic, progressive challengers that can take you into a runoff, you always have to take it seriously. And I think these
Kappelman in
guys are.
46?
I think he's going to a runoff. Yes.
Yep.
Hope so.
Moore in 49.
I think that she may get him on her first try, right? It's head to head.
There's no runoff. There's only 2 of them.
Maria Haddon is an incredibly impressive candidate.
Ed Burke in 14?
Let's get him.
Let's get them.
You know, I folks should look at Tanya Patino. She's
Yeah.
the front running challenger to him with support from Chewy.
Mm-hmm.
It's clear that he's not doing a good job representing his constituents. Let's face it.
Right.
Who's likely to replace Danny Solis in Pilsen?
That one's really wide
Wide
open.
open,
I'm
right.
not sure what's going to happen there.
Ira
There's-
Setchel,
yeah, there's a couple of good progressive
and then
candidates.
Chewy's behind someone else.
Yes, Chewy's behind Hilario Dominguez. I'm not sure how that's going to play out.
I'm not either.
So,
Well,
there's going to be a lot of runoffs.
Will John Arena survive?
Yes,
sure.
John Arena will survive, but he's a really important progressive incumbent that I hope folks will turn out for and volunteer for and donate to. We
Amen.
need to make sure he gets reelected.
Well, we are sorry to have to say goodbye, but we have that other guy sitting
But
out
you're
there,
invited back.
and we're going to keep coming to you.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
If we could beat out your old man and uncle about having you as a ongoing drop-in political.
Well, they always get first dibs because, my
Yeah.
dad did bring me into this world. So
Yeah, he did.
he can take me out.
We're talking about the wonderful team of Klonsky and Klonsky on
Hitting left. with
Lumpin'
the
Radio,
guys
yeah.
down there
on
on Lumpin' Radio.
Right.
on
Friday
Fridays.
at 11 o'clock.
Trying to make sure we're not left behind.
Indeed, indeed. Thanks so much for making it down here in the cold, Joanna.
Thank
and
you for having me.
And we're going to
Good
take
luck
a
on this
musical
election.
break,
Feel
and
right
I
at
believe
home.
it's going to be "I'll Take You There" by Mavis Staples at the Obama White House.
All
Take
right.
it away. We'll be right back with more Live from the Heartland. Still on the left end of your dial.